and welcome to the Life and Liberty podcast. I'm Sharayah Colter, the Chief Communications Officer with the Danbury Institute, and I'm joined today by Aniela Chis, who is the Director of Church Partnerships for the Human Coalition. And we're so grateful to have you here today with us, Aniela, and I'm hoping that you can be able to share a little bit with people your personal story and also just some insight from your work there with the Human Coalition. I know that a lot of our audience is pastors and Christians and leaders, and they will really benefit from hearing from you firsthand and also kind of hearing what the church can be doing to improve on standing for life in general in their churches, in their communities. But first, I do just want to introduce you a little bit to our people. Aniela Chis is the Director of Church Partnerships for Human Coalition, and she mobilizes the church and volunteers to support local pregnancy care clinics, something that our audience definitely cares a lot about. Heavily involved in ministry, currently speaks passionately about pro-life issues across the country and draws on her own personal experience. She resides in Dallas, and that's where the Danbury Institute is primarily based as well. So we're glad to be nearby the Human Coalition here. Aniela is a wife and a proud mother of 3 wonderful kids. Thank you so much for joining us today, Aniela. We're so glad that you would take the time to join us.
It's a pleasure. The pleasure is mine. Thank you so much.
Well, if you can kick us off here, we'll just jump right into it. I would love for people just to be able to hear a little bit of your story and how you got to where you are today and how that all relates with the protection of the sanctity of life.
Absolutely. Well, I grew up in the church and I grew up in a wonderful Romanian family. We went to church all the time. But as I got to be into my teenage years, I started rebelling and just kind of falling with the wrong crowd. It was just my way of looking for affirmation and love out there. And sure enough, as a senior in high school, I had an unplanned pregnancy. And immediately I thought, oh my word, like I'm about to be found out. And I just I felt so much shame and guilt immediately. And I even thought, this is my fault. This is my doing. And I thought there's no way I could truly go through with the pregnancy because it would feel like I would drag my family under the bus and they would be exposed to all the shame and all of the condemnation just from our close-knit community. And really, it was kind of like that inner voice that I believe was the voice of the enemy that was like, Aniela, just go ahead, get rid of it, get through on the other side. If anything, you can get right with God after the abortion. And it's weird because even the places that I worked at in high school and the people that I surrounded myself with, it's like I kind of already knew internally what I wanted to do. And I went to kind of be reaffirmed in those choices with that crowd. If anything, it was weird because I thought I can't go to the church or to the Christian wise women in the church to share this with, or even with my family, because I thought there is no way that the church would be able to handle this. I never heard the church ever talk about abortion or anything like that. And I thought I'm going to go to my friends and I will just kind of be reaffirmed of, going through with the abortion and just getting right with God afterwards. So sure enough, went through with the abortion. And it's crazy because even the measures that the abortion clinic went through, because I was underage, I was 17 at the time, and they're like, hey, if we do need to get a hold of you at home, now mind you, this is not the day where we all had our cell phones and all of that. So if they're like, if we need to get a hold of you, like, can we say we're just a coworker from school? Like, we'll just, say a name and we'll connect with you that way. And at that time, I thought that was great because I was trying to sneak everything around, but they made it so easy to do so as well. So sure enough, I went through with the abortion, and while there was immediate relief, I thought, okay, it's in the past. I can get right with God now. That was very short-lived. Honestly, after a period of time, I just started to spiral in deep, dark thoughts, suicidal thoughts. And it was like that same voice, like the accuser of the brethren who once said, just get through on the other side and you'll get right with God then. It was at that point that voice came back, nothing audible, just in my spirit. And it was like, look what you did. You call yourself a Christian. Look at all of these things, you. And again, I felt like I couldn't really share this with anyone at all. And it was just me, myself, and I with these tormenting thoughts. Weeks led to months. And I thought, man, there's no way I've managed to mess up my life so badly in such a short amount of time. What hope what I have in the future. Really, that's the point. I feel like hope got snuffed out, and just started spiraling with, like I mentioned, with suicidal thoughts. Like, there's no way, who would ever love you? What children would you have in the future? Like, look what you've done. And sitting in that and just constantly thinking through that by myself, I just thought, man, there's no hope. There's no hope. I surely can't go to my family now. I can't go to the church now. And longer story short, there was this moment. I remember I was sitting in my room and just constantly having these thoughts over and over again. And it's in that moment I felt like light pierced in, and it was as though, like, the Holy Spirit, the conviction of the Holy Spirit was saying, yeah, Aniela, you did do all these things, but this is who I've come for. I've come for you. And I know that seems so basic. Again, I mean, I grew up in the church. I believed all the basics of scripture and who Jesus was and what he came to do. But in that moment, it became real to me. Like, yes, Aniela, Jesus came to seek and save that which was lost, but he came for me personally. And I thought, oh my word, I can grab onto that. So grabbing onto that truth is really what set me on the course to restoration and freedom. And I didn't know at that point what my life would look like afterwards, but I knew that for that day, I had enough hope. And then for the next day, I had enough hope. And really, over the course of the years, eventually, a couple years later, I met my husband. All of my 20s, we had our 3 children. And through post abortive recovery is instrumental. And I didn't even know these ministries existed or that they were out there. But I'm here to say that there's so much healing and restoration and wholeness on the other side of an abortion. And I'm just so grateful for an organization like Human Coalition that connects with women and reaches them and lets them know abortion is really not the way to go.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So, what role do you think the church, currently plays? I know that, a lot of churches are partnered with, pregnancy help centers. They'll do things like diaper drives and that sort of thing. But, from your experience, are churches typically really helpful to people who have gone through abortions? Does it seem like a taboo thing that they just kind of don't touch? What do you feel like is the current landscape on that?
Absolutely. I feel like it's the latter. Many times, as I connect with pastors and churches, just trying to bring awareness, yes, of our organization, but just the overall pro life and the abortion issue. And by and large, they're like, hey, Aniela, this is a political topic. I don't really want to address this.
Mm-hmm.
Or they'll say, Aniela, I feel like there are women and men in the church who've had an abortion, and I'm nervous to bring that up because I just don't want to rip off that wound, and I don't know how to deal with that. And to that I say, or actually, there's some pastors that say churches or abortions don't happen in my church, so therefore it's really not something I should tackle. And really, to all of those, I say, Pastor, before it became a political conversation, I mean, God had a say on the life and death issue way before now. And to those that say that, oh, abortion doesn't happen in my church, so therefore I probably shouldn't talk about it. Well, actually, recent stats say that roughly 40% of women in the church have had an abortion.
Yeah.
And for the pastors that say, well, I don't know how to address it, so therefore what? I won't address it. I feel like the same way we address all these other sins in the church, and we should, and to apply the gospel to that, we should the same way apply the abortion issue and apply the gospel to that as well. So I think there's a big educational component to the church that just isn't really there yet. So that's a lot of what I try to do is speak to the pastors that say, hey, it's not happening here, or we don't know how to address it, and say, I mean, there's resources. Just you as the gatekeeper of your church, pastor, allow post-abortive ministries to come in and to just kind of revive the Christians in the church that have gone through abortion. I mean, walking through an abortion recovery program, those are the men and women that will stand up and say, I want to lead a class on this now. And if we can handle this abortion issue within the 4 walls of our churches, before we even get out there, but within the 4 walls, we would change the landscape of America. But it has to start in the church, and the educational component is huge. Pastors
Yeah.
truly need to be exposed to what's going on.
Well, it seems like, when we're seeking like nationwide revival, um, in some respects, people are like, let's just brush things under the rug. But really, if we're looking for real revival of the real heart and real, lasting change, that begins with first saying, like, here is an issue, and Jesus is the answer to this issue, the sin problem that everyone is infected with. But circumventing that first step of acknowledging it seems to be maybe momentarily compassionate, but in the long term, not compassionate. That's actually really the opposite. I was talking to someone a few days ago about the pornography issue and how prevalent that is in the church as well. And they said a lot of the similar things that you're saying about, people want to pretend or just, not necessarily pretending on purpose, but don't even know that it is an issue with people in the church. But they were saying first, pastors need to recognize that it really is it is an issue, and not to pretend that the statistics are not true, but to say, okay, this is an issue people are struggling with and dealing with. Now, instead of just closing our eyes to it, how do we minister to people, the true gospel affecting their lives, of really revitalizing the heart? It just sounds really similar to what you're talking about there.
Absolutely. And I feel like many times pastors say, I just want to stick to the gospel. And if I preach the gospel, it'll just hit everything. And while
Mm-hmm.
absolutely, thank you, Lord, for the gospel. But I think that pastors it would benefit the congregants, the flock, to apply the gospel to a lot of these issues, this day and age, whether we're talking about anti-trafficking, the life issue. I feel like by and large over the last 50 some years, Planned Parenthood has been just they've stuck their tentacles in every sphere of influence, and they're advancing like crazy. While on the flip side, by and large, not all churches, but some churches have just, let's just stick to the gospel here. Let's just, more internally focused. And in our efforts to want to build a church, a bridge to the community, as we should, I feel like we're building that bridge, but the church is the one compromising and walking over to the other side. And we need to tackle some of these conversations, because guess what? I mean, our teenagers, our youth, they're already being indoctrinated with this, and we can't really come back on the defense. We really need to be proactive on the offense to educate on the sanctity of marriage, of male and female, of the life issue, so many things. We really need to get back to being on the offense of it, is what I see it as.
Right. Yeah. And it kind of brings to my mind just, when you look at the dollar bill and how people are trained to know the real dollar, what it looks like, so that then when they see a counterfeit, they can recognize it. I think that kind of goes along with what you're saying about, we need to be proactive and on the offense of teaching, like, this is what God says is his good design for gender, for marriage, for life, for purity, for all of those things, so that, that is first addressed and the standard is set. And then when you have people, that are struggling, then you can meet them and minister to them, but that they kind of are tandem and go hand in hand.
Yeah, what I would love to see in churches, and the way I see abortion, it's on the spectrum of all the way here at the end, we have abortion. And if we peel back the layers, kind of like the layers of an onion, we ask, okay, well, why do abortions happen? Well, peel one layer back. Well, because it's an unplanned pregnancy. Well, why do unplanned pregnancies happen? Well, it could be because of affairs. It could be because of teen pregnancies and all of that. Well, why is that happening? Like, let's look at the family. What is the dynamic? What has the dynamic been over the last 20, 30, 40, 50 years, with the influence of men in the home, women working a lot more and more outside of the home? And I'm all for women working. I have a job, but it's just this extreme off balance. Even social media and the component that plays into it, or just in Hollywood, everything has been so sexualized. And
Yeah.
I think we need to get back to the root of having strong families and strong marriages and being there for our children. So when our children are preteen and teenagers, they're not looking out there
Right.
for all of what they perceive as truth. Like, we establish truth, biblical truth in our homes. And then down the line, well, there won't be unplanned pregnancies that lead to abortion. So
Right.
it's so much more of a bigger topic even than abortion itself, which is kind of the
Yeah.
fruit here on the end.
That makes so much sense. And, for sure we are working vehemently to end legal abortion in America. But I think what you're saying is so right on, with the sexual revolution occurring and things, going major in the wrong direction at that point forward, there is a lot to be done, like you're saying, to build strong families, to build a church that really stands on the beauty of God's design and his, blessing of obedience there. So if you were going to talk to, a group of pastors and you were going to say, hey, here's maybe 3 or so things that you could do, starting, in this next 6 months at your church to improve and work in the right direction here, like what were some things you would tell them?
Yeah, first thing I would bring that awareness of this is happening within your community, within your church. And I would love for them, again, as the gatekeepers of the church, to be bold and just talk about the issue. And sure enough, when they rip off that Band-Aid, it's going to be infected. I mean, there's going to be within their congregation a lot of people feeling a certain way because they're addressing it, but come alongside with ministries. This is really not another plate that the pastor has to to spin. Like, I can't even imagine being a pastor in this day and age and just the pressures and the stress. But rip off that Band-Aid and bring in local ministries that are already great at doing post-abortive care, and reach out to a local ministry to come and serve the congregants in that manner. And then the people within your church, they'll be healed from this, and then they'll want to lead groups, and just a ministry could really develop out of that. So post-abortive care, that is instrumental. In addition to that, it's look within your community to find a local pregnancy resource center. There's Last I've checked, I mean, they're anywhere between 2,700 to about 3,000 PRCs all throughout America. And find a local pregnancy center and attach yourself to them. There's, yes, that financial component, like for churches to give, because that's how a PRC survives and thrives, is through your financial efforts. But also there's programs within that PRC where you can connect and meet with those mamas and really bring them into your church and help undo a lot of that trauma or whatever their patterns of behavior is. Like, connect with a local PRC. And really, I mean, those couple things are great to just start off with. There's other ministries like Love Life, where they have houses of refuge, where a church becomes what they call a house of refuge. That means a pastor will talk about this conversation a couple times throughout the year. There's going to be mentorship, post-abortive ministries, and just on the website, when girls are looking and they're scared and they don't know where to turn, they will find that there's a local church that will be there to support them, and they'll go to that church for post-abortive ministry or recovery, or just a place where I want to keep my child. It was outside of marriage, and there's a lot that goes into that, but I know that that church will not push me away. They will help me with this. Those are just a couple of things that I think would be great and easy to implement.
And just, it sounds very much like a holistic approach to building a culture of life. There's so many spokes to that wagon wheel, I think. And I know even personally in our church, we have seen a lot of people come to be part of our church because of the Pregnancy Resource Center. So it's certainly a great way to reach out to people who are already hurting and, share the gospel with them and see their lives completely changed forever.
Who are we if we don't do that, right? I mean, really, be Jesus with skin on in our community and bring people into the fold with the gospel.
Right. Well, if people want to learn a little bit more about what Human Coalition is doing, or they want to be a church that is, connected with you, can you tell us like how people can get connected with you personally or through Human Coalition?
Yeah, absolutely. Please feel free to go to humancoalition.org. That is our website, and there is a volunteer tab. If you click on that, and that is a great way to connect with us. Those emails will come my way, and we'd love to reach out and just see also how we can come alongside and support the churches. So it's not just here's Human Coalition, how you can serve us, but really my heart is, how can I also serve you, Pastor? How can I serve you, church? So that's a great way to connect with us.
Love it. So awesome. Well, thank you, Aniela, so very much for joining us today. We really appreciate everyone tuning in, and we hope that people will be able to kind of implement some of these ideas into their churches and help us overall to be across the country building a culture of life.
Amen.
So thank you so much.
This has been an edition of the Life and Liberty podcast of the Danbury Institute. The Danbury Institute is an association of churches, Christians, and organizations aligned to affirm and preserve God-given rights to life and liberty. To learn more, visit danburyinstitute.org. The work of the Danbury Institute relies on generous patriots like you. To support, visit danburyinstitute.org/give.